Kumala and Ablata, today's Daf is Daf Bem Aleph Amad Aleph. This is the Gemara for Tuesday. And just as a brief introduction, if you come forward and you committed a sin and involves compensation, of course you have a compensation. However, if you come forward and say you committed a crime that involves a penalty, a monetary penalty, you are potter. You're exempt. And because the pasuk says that only the court can find you guilty. There's actually two ways of understanding pshat. Is the pshat that a court can only find you guilty? You cannot incriminate yourself. However, you're still, in theory, you're still obligated to pay the money. Because nobody can compel you to pay the money. So to be Yaitzi Shemayim, you should pay it. Or if witnesses come afterwards and say, Moide B'Knas V'Achar Bo'edim, in one opinion, the Gemara says that you have to pay because the chiyuv is always there. The other way of understanding pshat is moide b'knas shepoter, is that if you were moide, as if you did tshuva, and that hodah itself is payment. So therefore, you potter. If Adam come tomorrow and say, yes, we know you committed this crime, you don't have to pay because you're already exonerated. Two ways of saying moide b'knas. But coming back to our talking about oinus and mefata, so the question of the trade is the 50. The moment side is you pay the hurting, harming the reputation. The pagam. That already is you're paying true compensation. It's not a fixed amount. So therefore, if you come forward and you admit that you committed one of these averas, like you're mafater, you're ma'anis, it depends which ones we will obligate you to pay. Which one we say, well, wait to beclash your potter. Says a mission. The top. If somebody says, Patricia is Bita Shaplini, I seduced the young girl of this person, Mishalim, he has to pay. Boish has begun the shame and the hurting reputation. Alpi has to be based on his own admission. But the aim Mishalim Knas, don't pay the penalty because Knas. Another example, Mishalim as a keren, you pay the principal. That's the monetary compensation. I'll be based on your admission. But you don't pay the double, the second 4 times. And this is because a couple the first and so on and so forth. It's not like that each one is a disparate payment. Even though here payments are linked together, you're only going to pay the monetary side, but not the penalty side. Case number 3, Hamis Shoidi as Pliny, my cow killed a person, if you have to pay compensation. That's called kufra. In the beginning of Makkah, we have a whole discussion. Kufra kapara, kufra l'mayna. If this compensation you're paying, is that actually a monetary compensation, the value of a life, or is it more like a kapara, an atonement? Anyway, you came forward and you stepped forward. You said that my shirt committed this particular crime, killed somebody. Oh, you should play to kill the person. In this case, you pay based on your admission because you're paying monetary value. And even when it comes to kafir, Rashi says this follows opinion that kafir is momentous value. If kafir be kapara, it's not so clear what would Rashi hold that. Would Rashi hold that a kapara may be treated like a knas, a penalty, or is a kapara not like a penalty, and if we have to pay that as well? In fact, we had an opinion at Tesa before that by Truma. He was talking about by Kamla B'Derabbaneh because he's saying he's taking Truma, you have to pay monetary compensation as a kapara. And when it comes to kapara, we don't want the Kamla B'Derabbaneh to exempt you, we want you to actually pay it. So it's not clear that then, if according to the opinion that that's kufra kapara and you admit to it, would you have to pay that as well? But you need a kapara, or you say, no, it's sort of like a knas, and therefore you don't pay it. So that cloud, this is the rule. Call him Mishalim, yes, if you pay it more at the moment, taking mission literally, it sounds like if you pay more than what the value is, then that's called a penalty. Ain't a Mishalim al Piafra. You don't pay, you pay less, not so clear, as we'll discuss in the Gemara. So the Gemara, listener, why don't we say a bigger chiddush, a nasty, not only in the case where he said that I seduced, but even in the case where he says I made an oinus, and still I don't have to pay the knas. And even though he's saying I did a terrible thing, I did such a terrible thing, so maybe we should believe him. Why would somebody put himself in that position? Nevertheless, we say that you are potter. And why? As Gemara says, so why don't we say that? It's obvious. In fact, it's not just big Kiddush. Why not? A nasty, because there's two parts of the Mishnah. The part about the Knas that you're a potter, and the part about Beish Begam that you're a Chayiv. As far as the Beish Begam that you're a Chayiv, there's a bigger Kiddush in Patisi than the Kiddush of a nasty. Why is that? When you say that I seduced her, you're not only making yourself culpable, you're also involving her. You're saying that she was equally involved. She's not a victim at all. So you are casting aspersions on her. On the other hand, when you say nasty, it's totally your fault. She was a victim, an innocent victim. So maybe when it says patisi, because you're also casting aspersions on her, we shouldn't believe you. Says the Mishnah, we do as far as payment is concerned. So the Mishnah, nasty, the like you're not in any way casting aspersions on her. The Mishnah is become if you have to pay all the monthly compensation based on your admission. I will patisi the kapogim when it comes to patisi, you're actually affecting her, adversely affecting her as well. Up to pay, that you do. Says the Gemara, Mastis and our Mishnah is the Leike Haitan. Our Mishnah does not agree with the following. Even Beish Begam, even Beish Begam, you don't have to pay your admission. And why not? Because you're casting aspersions on her. It's not fair. We don't believe she. If we take your money, then people will think there's credibility to what you said, and therefore you ruined her life. What happened? Listen, she's happy to be Michael. I don't care if he casts aspersions on me. I need that money desperately. Why do we have to worry more about her credentials or her dignity more than she herself? She's Michael. She is prepared to forego it. So according to Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda, would she then be able to accept the money and force this person to give the money? Gemara says no, because okay, she might be prepared to forego. What about her father? What about What about her father's happy? What about the rest of the family? The rest of the family are all being tarnished by her, and therefore she has no right to forego on their behalf. So what about the whole family says we don't care, we need the money. We don't believe it's impossible. Like the we're not happy, and therefore, and we cast the aspersions on one person. We're not just tarnishing her reputation; we're tarnishing the extended family as well. See how important it is to make sure we have a good reputation, because it affects just your immediate family, yourself, your immediate family, but your extended family as well. And Taisa then points out, however, let's say if she's a Giyatis, and let's say her father as well as a Ger, that's it. There's no other family because the rest of them are going. Then maybe, according to Yehuda, you would have to actually then pay. Didn't we learn? There's a machlekes in the Gemara Baba Kama that says, well, the famous machlekes as follows. We have that if somebody had an animal, machlekes 3 times or 4 times, if the animal goes ahead and board, then we say that you have to pay compensation, full compensation. So kulamu, it's habitual gore, you pay full compensation. However, when it comes to Shem Regel, the animal causes damage just by trampling or by eating. That's something that happens as commonplace. You should have been much more careful. You have to pay the full nezik immediately. Comes to Kedem, where the behemoth is acting slightly abnormal, so then there's a machlekes aside. And then we say that the first time you're merely a tam, you pay only half of the damage. And there's a whole calculation of how you do that. Even though you pay half the damage, it can never be more than the value of the animal that caused the damage. But if you 3 times, you move and you have to pay the full compensation. The question is, how do we view this palga niska, this half of nezik? Do we view it as if really you should have paid the full amount, the teres rachmanos in you, so therefore whatever you're paying value? Or do we say, no, really you potter, how should you know it's like an accident, it's not your fault? However, the Torah wants to penalize you to ensure that it doesn't happen again. So then whatever you're paying is really a knas. The Alter Rebbe once had overheard, and the Kedain writes in the Sefer, Alter Rebbe once heard that two literature people talking about the Alter Rebbe, and they were standing in the distance, they didn't think he could hear. They were saying Alter Rebbe is a Gon Olam. But why would he follow Baal Shem Tov? As far as they know, Baal Shem Tov is a very simple, teacher's helper. What did he know about learning? I don't know Kabbalah, Chassidus, but what do you know about Nigla? Alter Rebbe heard them, he went over to them, and he started to say a pilpul on this sugya of Palga Niska, Palga Niska Knas. And he spoke for 3 hours explaining one opinion. They were so blown away by it. And Malteba finished and he says, and now do you want to hear the others? And they said, we didn't really understand what he said, now we can't go any further. And Malteba said, this is one of the papulim that the Baal Shem Tov said, that the Magid told it over to me. And he was an unbelievable guy. So anyway, so the sugya is Palga Niska Kosa, Palga Niska. Says the Gemara, Eat more, you learn. Palga Niska, the Papa says, Palga Niska Mamoina. The Papa says, I believe that it's you're paying a value, just less. And when you issue over Palga Niska Knosa, that half the Nezik is actually a penalty. You don't have to pay anything. The more explains. A Papa of Palga Niska Mamoina, why is it considered you're paying value? Somebody holds he holds that really animals generally are wild. And therefore, Bedinu, technically, the Mishalim Kula, you should have paid the full compensation. You should have been much more cognizant of how your animal behaves and should have been more careful. But Rachmana, the Chayzel had Rachmana, Zakati Loyai too. The fact is you weren't warned yet, so no what, pay less than you should will reduce the amount to halfway. But whatever you're paying value. When Yeshua says no palga, whatever you're paying is purely a penalty. And why is that? Because somebody else, stam animals are generally well behaved. Ubedinu, technically, the loyal shalom klal, you shouldn't be paying anything. The rachmanu de consider to penalize you, in order that you should protect your animal. Now the Gemara is going to ask a number of questions on the subject of palga niska knasa and palga niska leman. And similar Gemara in Bava Kama. Says the Gemara. The end of the first page. So now we learned Hanizik and the Hamazik betashlum. The Nizik, the victim, and the Mazik, the perpetrator betashlum, they both participate in the payment. What does that mean? If you say that what happened Nizik is mama, which means really he should be receiving the full value of the damage. Let's say it's $100, but he's only receiving 50, which means the Mazik is contributing 50, but the Nizik is also contributing 50 because he's not receiving the full compensation. Okay, makes sense. You say the Nizik is also involved in the payment. One says that's Kimas, which means the Nizik is entitled to nothing, and getting 50% is actually a bonus. So where's his contribution to the payment? How should love the day kishaka, but Tashlumin, he says, mother, whatever he's getting, he doesn't deserve. You tell me that he's contributing how? What's the law? You know, talking about here. The law is that if, let's say, the animal is worth $100 and the animal dead is worth $25, so that $75 is really the damage, and you pay half of that. Now, what happens if so the Nizik gets to keep the carcass? The Nizik didn't sell the carcass for a month, and it got devalued because it waited a month. Now it's no longer worth $25, worth $10. That loss is carried purely by the victim. So therefore, the duration of the value of the carcass. And therefore what? He's contributing. Whatever the value, the valuation of that carcass, that's the contribution that the Nizik used towards. So even though you hold Palga, Niska, you hold that Palga Niska's Knas, he's still contributing. Says the Gemara, even that. Tanina, we learned already elsewhere. Why does this Mishnah have to say that? But Mazik and Nizik Betashlumin. And you're telling me Nizik contribution is Chas Nevelo, the duration of the value of the carcass. We learned that already elsewhere. What does it mean? It says the word tashlumit. Tashlumit means payment. It also means to complete. What do you mean to complete? Who has to then go ahead and bother themselves to commute the value of the carcass to money? That is the predicament of the victim. So we see that he's contributing. So the word tashlumi nezik, he's being mashed to the value, to the damage. Someone says you're right, but we need two. Chad betam. One is talking about an animal that the first 3 times, the chad b'mu, one and on the 4th time. And both times the devaluation of the carcass from what it was when it died. So you took it to Bezin, the nizik has to carry it, regardless tamamu. Why do you need 2? What's the chiluk? Why would if you knew time? Why would you automatically assume the same thing mamud or vice versa? I'll tell you. But we think each one has a stringency, the other one doesn't have. I would say no. The guy wasn't warned yet, so therefore. What do you call it? The mazik is not at fault. He was really aware that his animal is this way. So therefore, the nizik has to carry the loss. We're trying to be lenient with the mazik. But the mazik should have been careful. He should have been more careful. Why does the nizik have to go and schlep the carcass and try to sell it? Maybe the mazik has to carry it, and he has to pay the full compensation nizik, and he keeps the nevela. That's what we would have thought. So now that you tell us, he's paying the full amount. Okay, so therefore, one leniency we have that the nizik has to sell the carcass. Abel tam, but a tam, amo loy. When it comes to tam, he's only paying half. So maybe why should the nizik? He's losing half the value of the animal. You want him also to go schlep around with the carcass. Let the master do that. Therefore, you need both. Okay, continue. Toshma. We lived in another Mishnah. Ma bein tam lamuid, and it seems to us that he's trying to list the distinctions between a tam and a muid. And he says, a tam mishlam chatzon nezek gufit. The tam pays half the nezek megufit for the value of the animal that caused the crime. So, if, for example, the value of the damage, half the damage is $200, and the animal itself is only worth 100, you don't pay the 200, you only pay 100. Chatzon nezek megufit from the animal itself. But a muid mishal nezek shalom min aliyah. When it comes to a muid, we don't care what the value of the mazik animal is. You owe $200, the mazik animal might be worth 25. You got to pay for the best of your assets, and you pay the full $200. So l'chayda, according to you, you should have added something else. Now, but look, Tony, he doesn't say what you just said. Shatam, if you hold a pal b'niska knasa, it should have said by a muad if you're moida, you pay the full amount, and by a tam if you're moida, you pay nothing. The pal b'niska knasa. Shatam and mishal bi'atim, mishal bi'atim. Why don't you make that distinction? Tana v'shayim. We have a general rule: whenever we leave something out, if we leave a couple of things out, then you can't ask why he left it out, because he wasn't out there to delineate every single possibility. My shy, the high shy. What else was left out? Chatzi koifer. What left out was by a tam. We said before that you pay koifer. If your animal killed a person, you pay compensation. But if it was a tam, you only pay half the compensation. Says the Gemara. Sorry. If you're muad, you pay the full thing. And right now the Gemara thinks that if you're a tam, we follow the Rabban who say that you don't pay anything. Another distinction, and it's omitted. Says the Gemara, that's not an omission. Chatzi kofer is not really omission, because many Haman is like Lili, Tam Misham Chatzi kofer. In his opinion, tam pays half a kofer. And if a tam pays half a kofer, so therefore it didn't have to be mentioned at all. It didn't have to be mentioned at all in this distinctions, because we already made a distinction between half paying a tam and paying a muad. We already know that. You don't have to mention this at all. Okay, so then what further? Toshma coming there. Hamish Shady is plenty. Person comes forward and says, "My animal killed that person." I show you plenty. My animal killed the cow of that person. You have to pay, because you have to pay the value. My lab, we're talking about even by a tam. So we see that even though you're paying on the shorish of plenty, you're paying only half, and yet it says that you have to pay it, which means a palviniska mamayna. Was it like, no? We're talking about, and the same thing applies to the shady plane that killed the person, which is kaifer, and we're following us like, you said you pay half a kaifer, so you pay. So we're talking about a time, we see that's moment. Was it like, no, we're talking about a muad. Time maybe palviniska knasa, this is a muad. But when it comes to time, what are you going to tell me? That ain't a mishal mapiatzma. You tell me by time is only a class, and if you don't pay, so why at the Tony say for the continue the mission there? It says, "I plainly if you kill the ever of that person, which is a knas, it's fixed always 30 shkol. Ain't a mishal mapiatzma. So why introduce an ever? Niflig v'nistim of the day, make a difference in a time and a mood. Now a time you don't have to pay because it's a knas, and mood you do. But medra mood, but time mishal mapiatzma. When it answers, so what's it? When it answers, what's the difference? You want me to introduce a new variable there, tam, and make it a singular tam in the mood. Here you pay half, here you pay. Here you not believe at all because it's a knas. Here you pay all. I can make the same distinction between an evid, which is a knas, and my kid killing another shari, which is a compensation. So what's the difference? The principle is knas versus mammon. So why is it better to talk about tam versus muad or talking about an evid versus a? I want to talk about only a muad, and within a muad itself, sometimes it's a knas, which sometimes it might be a bigger chiddush. So therefore, it doesn't prove one way or another. Yeah. And so further, talk about coming in. This is the rule. Yes, how much if you pay more than what the amount is, then Mishal is a class, you don't pay. But if it's less, then Mishal you do pay. So we see clearly from here. If you're paying less, which is what Chachi Nezik, the din would be that you will pay because it's mammon. Proof support. Papa was a line. No, like don't say more, but in contrast to less. More versus the full amount. You pay the full amount, that's mammon.
So you want to ask, Abba Pachas, my, but if it's less than the full amount, ain't a. So at least why don't we just say the rule? Zach, this is the rule. Kol she'eino mishal kamashi. Why is the Mishnah worded in a way saying more? Forget about more. Just say if you're not paying the exact amount, I don't care more or less, makes no difference. The thing is that you pay that it's knas and you might be knas and you are potted. So it's a kasha that we're never sure. Einu shalmeatz the masha pachas the masha yes include everything more or less to yufta. Very strong question. Yet the Gemara concludes the hilchos of palvin is a knas. Nevertheless, Allah is like a sure. But half of the nezik is a knas. Says the Gemara to yufta the hilchos you reject and you repudiate and then you think that's halacha. Well, yes. Time of my traces. Why are you repudiating? You should like Tony Kambosh because you wanted to say if you don't pay the exact amount which caused damage, I don't care how it varied, but it's not the amount. It's a knas. Like psychole, it's not so clear because sometimes you pay less and yet it's not knas. For example, we're going to have a more overkama. Chatzin nezik traders. When I was walking and when I was walking, rocks to go flying out because it's very common. So it's like a regel and you have to pay. But the trader said, "Loch mashim sinai," that you only pay half. A knas, that's mammon. But he's not paying the full amount. So the Mishnah couldn't just state unequivocally if you're not paying the full amount. It's knas because it's not true. Sometimes it's mammon. You're paying compensation. It doesn't say it. Says the Gemara, that you introduced the halacha is that half an eznik is knas. So high kalba this dog the ochel imri that ate a sheep, which is totally uncommon. Or shun cat the ochel tangel. I ate large chicken. The chicken is very uncommon. It is different. So it's no longer shen. It's more like keren. In other words, it's one that's the first 3 times the tam, and the tam is probably a knasa. So therefore, what? So therefore, we're going to have a din that knossos can only be collected in Eretz. You need smicha, you need special authority to collect knossos. And in Babel, there was a period, and after a certain period, we're no longer able to collect knossos that didn't have smicha in Babel. And therefore, if somebody causes that kind of damage in Babel, you don't collect it in the Bezdin because you can't do it. Because you can't collect knossos, because Allah is, unless that half a knazik is knas. Let me be in a bubble. But if, let's say, the cat eats small chickens, which is common, then it's mammon. Mammon, you collect in Babel. It's common, magbin we collected. Now, what happens if we eat tofas? But if, let's say, the victim went ahead and grabbed it, we don't take it away. We don't take it away from them because since we just don't have the authority to collect it, you still owe the money. So if that guy went ahead and grabbed it, the victim went ahead and grabbed it, then it's a good grabbing. However, Machlekes Rashi says, according to Rashi, it says Rashi says clearly, if you grab money, if the damage was worth $100, and let's say Tom is $50, half, you pay half. If I see him have $50, I grab $50 worth of stuff, I don't care what it is, it's a good grabbing and you can keep it. And Rashi uses expression, he doesn't have to come screaming for us. In other words, as if he's allowed to do the chafila. Tom says, no, the only thing you can take is the mazik's animal and not take anything else, anything else, because anything else, the mazik then will take you to court. It's not exact same value. And then there'll be a court case, and even the court case would decide how much it is, and the court case would make a ruling. What's going to happen then is that Bezdin is making a ruling, and even the animal itself is if it's worth more than what the damage is, then the Bezdin has to rule, pay it back, and that itself is a ruling. But it comes all under knas. Other Rishonim disagree. They hold that once he grabbed it, and now it's just a question if he grabbed too much and you overreach and want to return some of the money, that's not called a din of the knossos, and that's called a din taira on what he took in excess, and that's not the knas, and therefore that can't be judged in bubble and it could be returned. Then the Gemara continues. He says, look, you owe me the money. You can't collect it. I want you to go with me to Yisrael. You can do that. Just like there's no Bezdin in the city, I can say, come with me to another Bezdin. Same thing over here. I can tell you, come with me at Yisrael. If the mazik refuses to go, we put him in chayim. And all the laws of we had more by cotton apply. But regardless about this, whether he calls him to or not, we put him in chayim to get rid of this cat, to get rid of these vicious animals. We say, we get rid of this thing that's causing damage, based on what Rab Nosson said. Said, how do you know you go to the base? I know you shouldn't have a bad dog in your house, which means even a barking dog, if it causes any fear in anybody, you shouldn't have that in your house. You shouldn't have a line that's a bit shaky and not unsafe. Now it says, you shouldn't have something that causes blood being spilled in your house. Okay, that finishes Hadnalach Elu Nidus. That finishes the third page. The fourth page begins in similar things about pitui and oinus, about different payments, before we move on to other areas. Okay, we'll continue tomorrow. Mitzvah Hashem. Have a good day.